Do you ever have those moments when you realize you've not actually seen or heard from your people in a really long time, and then you finally catch back up and you're like, "Hi, it's nice to meet you. Where have you been? Nate, like, where have you been? You've been everywhere."
I have, yeah. Well, the summer break's a weird one, Nicole, because you kind of just, as an F1 journalist, you kind of just disappear for a couple of weeks. But as we were just talking about before we recorded, I was in a place a lot of American listeners will be very familiar with, at least from history. I went
Mhm.
down to Plymouth last week for a wedding, so I saw the coast out where the pilgrims sailed away from. My friend got married there. Funnily enough, in the UK, we don't talk too much about that. We just kind of let that bit
Weird.
of history go. But yeah, so I've just been kind of around the UK. It's been nice because we spend so much of our life in terminals and train stations and
Mhm.
stuff. Like it was a drive down to there, but it's just nice to be in one place for a little while. And then we have, I mean, it's before we know it, I mean, this time next week, I'll be getting ready to go to Zandvoort, so it comes back around quickly.
Back into it.
What about you, Nicole? You just
Uh,
mentioned that you've been
Um,
very busy.
you had your friend's wedding. I celebrated my mom and dad's 50th wedding
Oh wow,
anniversary.
50 years,
Um,
amazing.
Hung out with some friends, did some hiking as well in Maine. By the way, like Maine off the charts. You should totally go. So next summer break, I got some things for you to do
Go to
like
Maine.
here. Yes, there we go.
That sounds
Anyway,
great. Yeah.
welcome to Unlapped. We're presented by Oracle. Right now, Oracle is offering to cut your current cloud bill in half if you move to OCI. See if your company qualifies at oracle.com/unlapped. It's been a minute since we have like been in the same place at the same time. So remember, if you are watching, you can like and subscribe. You can find us all season long on the ESPN F1 YouTube channel. If you're listening someplace else, great, awesome. Just hit us up with the 5-star review. And remember, we are here weekly throughout the season. And actually, it's just throughout the year. So 365 days. Even though we go away, we don't actually ever go away. You know who doesn't go away? Our producers, because they're needy, as
Yeah.
always. No, they hit us up with some questions.
Brilliantly needy, I would say. Brilliantly.
Brilliantly needy, right? Right, Q? He's on mute. He can't hear us. Anyway, let's start with the questions that they have for us for this week, per usual. And the first one's kind of, just like reflecting on the season so far. Who is the biggest surprise of the season in your eyes? Just a good one.
There's quite a few,
I
but I
know.
think that the one standout really, and I think it's really actually impossible to ignore lately, has been Sauber and Hulkenberg and Bortoleto. I think the important thing, isn't it, when you're looking at surprise or disappointment, you almost have to look back at what expectations were at the start of the year, and then that kind of almost is
Hmm.
where your expectations are. Sauber really have done a lot of nothing since the last kind of 4 or 5 years. They really haven't, they haven't really scored a lot of points. They've always, especially recently, we've been waiting for this Audi project that's coming in next season. And I think even this season coming in, it was a big coup them getting Hulkenberg, but I don't think anybody thought they'd be, I think, about 48 points. And to put that into perspective, they're about 10 points away from where they finished total last season.
Right.
They're already way ahead of where they were. And obviously, the big the big standout result was the Hulkenberg podium, and that was incredible. And I think it was, probably one of the feel-good moments of the last couple of seasons. But also, 5 of the last 6 races, they were finishing in the points. Bortoleto
Mhm.
seems to be making a step up as well. So I think all the things are kind of coming together for Sauber nicely. And I would say that would, for me, I wouldn't have called that. Ahead of the summer break, I would have said, sorry, ahead of the season, I would have said, I'd like to see that happen. But really, we hadn't seen much progress from Sauber for a long, long time.
No.
So I'd have to say them. But I think there's a few other candidates. I'm curious to see if you think
But I
anyone
also
else
think
picked
I
out.
think you can like take it in spurts because I think there was, if you would have taken the first handful of races, and I think even we did like a mini power rankings at one point, and I think we all sort of said Williams for a while was a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, that's right. Early in the year, yeah, they were.
Early in the year, they were a surprise. More Alex Albon than maybe Carlos Sainz. But there was a point in the year where I think I was pleasantly surprised by Williams and their development. Though lately they've sort of maybe gone backwards a little bit or hit a bit of a low. There have been times when I have been like hugely surprised by the Racing Bulls,
Mm.
Isaac Hadjar's maturity, like especially since the way the season started with him not even taking the green flag in
Yeah,
Melbourne.
but I almost forgot that happened. His year's been so strong since then. So yeah, I think Hadjar and Racing Bull,
Exactly.
really good call. Yeah,
So there's been that. I don't think I expected um this first. I think I had it in my head that the second Red Bull would be
Mm.
better.
Yeah,
And obviously, one of the biggest surprises I think is not even related to anyone on the grid this year. To me, one of the biggest surprises is, oh, hey, maybe Sergio Perez wasn't that bad.
Yeah. No, yeah. I think that's kind of Perez's stock has been really helped, hasn't it, by the fact that
Yes.
Red Bull have had to cycle through two drivers, one of whom only got two races. And I think it's yeah, the hindsight kind of valuation now of Perez, I think has been set in good stead. I think it's a really good call. I mean, so I wrote a couple notes down here because I thought Sauber won it out, but I also had that Nicole. I had specifically Lawson only getting two races.
Uh-huh.
Um, but just how bad that second car or that second driver has been. I think all of us assumed something would click right. Maybe Perez was in
Yeah.
like a confidence spiral. Maybe he just wasn't there. And yeah, I think yeah, it sounds like Sergio Perez will be back next year with Cadillac. There's a lot of
Mhm.
reports are saying. So probably good that he's coming back with kind of. It's a bit like when historians look back on an event, back in the day, and they kind of revise what's happened, don't they? And they say, well, actually, it wasn't this bad. It was this is what happened. So I think that's happening with Perez. So I think it's a very fair one. And generally speaking, the biggest surprise, because I mean, it genuinely did shock me at the time in Red Bull, was Christian Horner leaving the team. I don't think anyone
Oh.
would have called that either. So yeah, I think that's as surprises go. That's pretty much the biggest one you're going to get.
Right.
Um, but
Also the timing of it.
the timing, I mean, and the fact that like my actual surprise when getting the text
Mhm.
saying he had gone from somebody at Red Bull was genuine, like a gasp, which I
Yes.
don't tend to react that much to stuff like that, but that really did get me. So yeah, those honorable mention ones, but I think all the ones you've listed there are really fair. And yeah, Hadjar, I've got to say that's a really good shout because I think out of everyone, if you'd said the moment he spun out into the wall in Australia, hey, Hadjar's actually going to be really impressive come the summer break. I think you'd have thought, really, like he's going to come back
Right.
from that because that seemed really at the time it was like that's as humiliating as it could get. So the fact he
Right.
kind of got around that, I think, yeah, that was pretty impressive and pretty surprising.
Because and I think it takes us back to the situation too, because I would have said when the season started, Kimi Antonelli was the most impressive rookie. And then
Yeah,
we've seen a bit of a lull from him. And while he's taken the lull, Hadjar has gone up. So the question is interesting to think about it as a whole, because I think you can take the season in various parts and take surprises from various parts. There have been times when I've been surprised, both good and bad, by Max Verstappen's performance. Because let's be honest, he's doing things that he probably shouldn't be doing in a car,
yeah.
because if you look at the other car, clearly it's not that great. And so
Well,
I've
I'd
been
actually,
surprised
yeah,
by his performance.
well, it's funny you say that because I was gonna see where we got to with Red Bull, but I actually put down here like I'm surprised at how little I've been surprised by Max this year, if that makes sense. So I totally agree with you.
Yes.
He's done so much stuff that it's almost become second nature now. He'll pull out a crazy lap, and it's funny being in the press center, the press
Uh-huh.
the media center at these races because Max could do something amazing, and everyone's like, "Wow, he's pretty good, isn't he?" Like it's almost like a shrug, like,
Yeah.
"Wow, okay."
No,
I mean, we're
there he
just we're
goes
just
again.
witnessing. We're just witnessing
Right.
something incredible. So yeah, I think what is surprising is that is just how stark the gap has been. So to your point exactly, the fact that Max has made Liam and then Yuki just look so ordinary.
Yes.
Um, it's been remarkable. And there was that spell, wasn't there, from about I mean, from the beginning of the year through to maybe there was Imola, maybe into Canada, and then Red Bull's car really seemed to get away. But there was that spell of about 5 or 6 races where literally everything Max did was just the best thing
Really.
you've ever seen. It was like, oh my
Yes.
god, this is like every week it was like he was raising the bar again. So yeah, I think that's a fair one too. But yeah, surprise. I would be surprised if Max doesn't win another race for the rest of the year. You know what I mean? That's where we're at with
Yes.
Max now. Even if the car's not great, like
Even if the
you're in
car's
that
rubbish.
yeah, you like with Max now, you're in that position where you think like it's actually he's so good that the bar is just almost unreasonably high, and your surprise then comes if he falls short of that, which obviously every driver falls short eventually of something like that.
But like in a lot of ways, that is also, it's not a disappointment, but
Mm.
it's sort of like because when I was answering these questions, I was like, maybe some of my biggest surprises are because of somebody who's not doing what I thought they would be doing. Like, so part of me is disappointed that Red Bull isn't better, because I thought they would be. I thought they would be a little bit more competitive in sort of keeping tabs on, the McLaren situation. Um, I am hugely disappointed in Lewis Hamilton. I
Yeah,
expected so much more out of Lewis Hamilton. I am
Agreed.
disappointed in basically all things Aston Martin.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah,
Maybe not eyebrows,
bar like
but
one race at the end of the first 14, which really, you know, well, I think maybe is slightly misleading. Yeah, I think Aston almost that's why I mentioned Sauber. Sauber are like having the kind of headline grabbing stuff that really Aston should be doing.
yes.
Given everything they've put in that team, and they should be doing it way better. Because they've been building that team for longer. So I think Aston's a really good shout. And yeah, I mean, because I mean they've been super underwhelming all year. I'm just looking at the champion.
Like Alpine. Like what are you doing?
Yeah. Well, it's mad, isn't it? Because you've got down the bottom there, you've got Alpine at the bottom and Haas in ninth. And now look, no disrespect to Haas, but you always expect Haas to be down that lower end,
Right.
racing bulls. But then you've got Sauber and Aston Martin. There's 1 point between them, and Aston would not have expected to be kind of in that cluster down there.
Yes.
So I think that's a really fair point. And I mean, actually, if you take Fernando Alonso out of that car, I think they're in a world of hurt, aren't they? They're down there with Alpine. I mean, Stroll's got. Let me just have a look at what Stroll's got. I mean, he's got 26 points. Fair enough. But okay, actually, he's got more than I realized he had. So he's actually got exactly half of the point. So actually, if Lawrence was here, he would he would fairly make the point he always makes. I thought Fernando Alonso was carrying the team, but there you go.
No, because
Live,
remember there was
live
the longest
acceptance.
time when Alonso didn't even have a point.
You're right. Yeah, I'm just looking at it now. It was right up until Spain
Canada?
when yes, the Spanish GP he got ninth, and then he went on a crazy run and he scored pretty much since then. Um, and yeah, so apologies to Lance Stroll and
But he was, but that, and I think that's the thing. There was a large portion of the season where Alonso was maybe carrying the team in qualifying, and then the race would
yeah,
come around, and the race would just go, and then all of the points would be up to Stroll, and Stroll, who was starting way at the back, would have to figure it out. I just think,
yeah.
in terms
Well,
of
to be fair, there
disappointment,
was the first two races Stroll scored, and then he didn't score again until the British GP. So there was a long stint that it was
yeah.
just that Stroll got sixth in Australia, then ninth. So yeah, but I just hadn't realized how many he'd got towards the end of the break. So
Yeah.
that there you go. Another surprise for me is how many points
There
Lance
you
Stroll
go.
has.
But I think
Um,
if you're going to ask me though, like the biggest disappointment, the
yeah,
the biggest,
I think you named it with for me anyway.
Lewis.
Would be Lewis. Yeah,
Lewis.
100%.
I just if you go back to our first show of the season, we
Well, we
we
were
were
hyped. We were so
we
hyped,
were
weren't we?
we were so hyped. And even if we were going into it being cautiously optimistic, I think our optimism for what Ferrari could do this season,
That's it.
based on where they were at this point a season ago and how from the summer break on, they were the best team on the grid. And I
Yeah,
and I just think I think we all thought, okay, they're going to pick up essentially where they left off.
that's it.
They're going to show improvement. They're bringing in an absolute world-class driver, obviously. And I don't want to say he's turned into a shell of himself, but there have been times this season where Lewis Hamilton has seemed like a shell of himself. And it has
Yeah.
made me wonder not about Ferrari, but about like him.
Yeah, that was definitely the optics of what he was saying suggested that, didn't it? I mean, I
Yeah,
think the disappointment for me is twofold. I think the Lewis one is there. But I keep telling myself, I'm like, Lewis did say at the start of the year, I want to win in 26, 25, I'm going to bet in. So I think we'll be able to know next season how disappointing it is. But you're right, Nicole. Like, when you're a seven-time world champion, it's like if Tom Brady had gone to the Bucks in 21 and just bombed out of nowhere. You would say, look,
exactly.
look, yes, that it's tough to move teams, but you are the self-proclaimed greatest of all time. You need to do better than that, basically. So I think that it's fair to be disappointed, and I don't think any fan would have expected that Lewis hadn't been on the podium once, come other than the sprint race. Come this
Right.
point. But I think the really key bit to hammer home for me as well is that Ferrari thing, because I think that you know, one overtake away last year in the final race of the season, they would have been constructors championships if they'd been a catch Lando at the end of the Abu
Mhm.
Dhabi Grand Prix. So obviously coming to this season, and because of 26 on the horizon, this big rule change, we all thought, well, how much of a gain really can one team make over its nearest rival over the winter? Obviously, McLaren have taken a huge step forward. Ferrari just haven't replicated that. But even with that, I thought if Ferrari does maybe not match McLaren in terms of the development over the winter. Having Lewis there is just such a boon for any team. The experience, the title-winning pedigree. You
Hmm.
thought maybe that would push him over the edge. Obviously, it's quite difficult to move teams at this point in the regulation. I think we're seeing that with Sainz and with Lewis, but. Yeah, disappointing. I'd say the bigger word for me is deflating more than disappointing. I think, you almost get used to Ferrari not living up to expectations
A
at this
little
point.
bit.
So the deflation comes in pretty hard. But yeah, I think Lewis, like, I mean, we had disappointments written here. I had Lewis kind of underlined just because, and I think the other thing, it's not even disappointment. It's because I think Charles has been great, lately as well. But it's
Wait, hold
almost
on.
like,
Do you feel like your parents a little bit here? I'm not mad. I'm just
yeah,
disappointed.
yeah, a little bit, because I do think that as media and as fans, we should judge Lewis on 26 rather than 25. Because ultimately we now know Ferrari aren't going to win the championship, but this is going to still paint our expectations going into next season because Charles looks so much more comfortable than him.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's actually quite a good analogy. Not mad, just disappointed.
Yeah.
It's kind of just, yeah, it's just whatever reason hasn't clicked. And actually kind of sad to see how deflated he was at the last race. I think that was more it. I wasn't mad, like I wasn't upset a driver was like that. It was just like, oh man, like this has really soured very quickly for him. And you
Hmm.
just hope getting away for the summer break, coming back, and obviously we've got Zandvoort next week. Then we have Monza. Hopefully, that getting in front of the Tifosi, driving in Italy, you would hope that maybe that's just enough to kind of just kickstart that feeling that Lewis had at the start of the year when really he did look like he was just kind of floating around on air the whole time. He was so
Yeah.
happy. He was like, I'm at Ferrari. I can't believe I keep looking at my race suit and it's red. And I'm just like, oh my God, I'm driving. Like that element of it seems to have just diminished a little bit in the last couple of weeks. And
And
that's and that's disappointing too.
even if you look at it through like a slightly cynical view where you're like, yes, that person is really, really excited to be doing what they're doing because that was a lifelong dream and so on and so forth. And even if you look at it like there was some sort of performance element to it, and I think the cynical part of my brain always does that, where if he was saying he was at 10 out of 10 excited, my brain is like, okay, so he's at least at a 6 or a 7. I saw there was genuine excitement. And I just feel, I think saddened because there's part of it that feels like you're watching the end of potentially the end of one of the greatest careers we've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I hope that that doesn't go out like this. I hope that there is sort of like a resurgence. So when I think back to him putting on the red uniform for the first time and him posing, in front of the buildings and just being like, "Hi, I have arrived." There was just so much hope and optimism for the entire team. And then to just see it go the way that it has,
Yeah.
it's you. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it was like sad. So yes, I'm disappointed because I was expecting so much more, but part of me is also just sad. Do you think though, given where they were a season ago and at this point going into the summer break a season ago, Ferrari was sort of like struggling out of the summer break, like we just said, they were the best team the rest of the way. If you're looking at teams who are going to make a big run now, is there hope that they can repeat what they did a season ago, or are we just like, nah, done?
Yeah, I am clinging on to that hope for Ferrari, and not just for Lewis, but for Charles Leclerc as well, because I think Charles is really at the moment probably driving as well as we've seen him drive for a while. What happened last year as well that was really interesting, Nicole, was, and you'll remember this because it was right after Miami, wasn't it, that they introduced that upgrade in Spain last season,
Mhm.
and everyone thought this is going to be the big thing, Ferrari going to be right up there, and it just didn't quite work for them. They weren't happy with it. They spent a lot of races troubleshooting it. They then, in the races leading up to the break, they were like, we think we've worked some things out. Came out the summer break, and you're right. They, from Zandvoort onwards, were the strongest team on a consistent basis. Probably should have won more races than they did. If you look at Baku last year, they should have won that.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, it seemed that what happened was, and I think that I do think there is this with Ferrari, and I plug it all the time. But when I was writing the Ferrari book that is sat behind me,
Wait, you wrote a Ferrari book?
yeah, I know, no one
What?
would know that if they listened to the pod. I never
Is
mentioned
wait, what's behind you right now? Is that like
it.
is that a Ferrari book? Oh wait,
Ferrari
look, there
book,
he
this
is.
old thing,
Nate,
this little
this
thing here.
this this
But
Nate guy wrote it.
but one of the things that came up in that, and I do think there's a lot to it, is that So when I spoke to people that had been at the team previously, a lot of them wouldn't actually want to say this on record. But they said Ferrari, when they're in the thick of a season, all the pressure, all the expectations, all the media reports, everyone's on top of each other. It's like the noise is just echoing around their heads. And when they can get away from that a little bit, he said, smarter decisions can get made because it's just a little less pressure. And I do wonder if last year, them kind of getting things together in the summer break, coming out from Zandvoort, like, okay, right, we've had a bit of a break. Let's just reset. Ferrari has a really smart group of people at that team. We always paint them, or they can be painted quite often as this kind of massively incompetent team kind of running around. But the biggest surprise and frustration kind of historically with Ferrari is they've underachieved with incredibly talented people, and that's consistently what they've done. So I actually think they could get it together. Obviously, the frustration from that point now is McLaren is so far up the road, it's not going to make a difference,
Mhm.
and B, you kind of look at it and you're like, all right, well, the longer term gain here isn't there because obviously the 2026 car is completely different. I'm sure there are little things they'll learn at this point that can go into next year, but if they did get it together, and imagine, Nicole, if we're in Austin again in October, I remember we were sat together watching when Charles went into turn one ahead.
Mhm.
If Ferrari are that good come that point in the year, you'll be like, man, why couldn't you guys have just done this straight out the gate? It
Yeah.
will be that feeling again. So even if they can replicate it, and I feel like they might be in a better. I think Zandvoort and Monza will be two strong races, certainly for Charles Leclerc anyway. It'll just be more frustrating, won't it? Because you'll look at it and be like, this was tantalizingly close. It was there. You guys just took 14, 15 races to get to it. So
Right.
we'll see how it goes.
Okay,
But
so I know you have an article coming out soon. I want to get to that in a second, but as long as we're sort of focusing on Ferrari for a second, the Oracle stat of the week is it's obviously this the stat of the week is brought to you by Oracle. Right now, Oracle is offering to cut your current cloud bill in half if you move to OCI. See if your company qualifies at oracle.com/unlapped. And the reason why I wanted to get to it real quick is because in Leclerc's last three races, he's actually had the same result as 2024. So Hungary, fourth, both years. Belgium, third. Silverstone, we'll just won't forget about it. Zandvoort, podium. Monza was a win. And it's
those are the next two. Yeah.
those
Yeah.
are the next two. So in your opinion, given the 2 years, but also given the history of what they are able to do, how confident are you that Leclerc can sort of repeat what he's been doing and therefore actually get a win in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think you've got. I mean, I love stats like that as well because sometimes you can look at some sports and those stats make a little bit more sense. And Formula One, sometimes they just don't, at all. But the one thing you can say about Charles Leclerc right now is he is driving as consistently as we've seen him for a little while. I think he had a bit of a wobble earlier in the year, but he's looking a lot better. I could definitely see him at least being on the podium at one or not, if not both of those races. Ferrari and Leclerc's won at Monza multiple times now.
Mhm.
I think he loves racing there. Obviously, so for people listening, it's Zandvoort next week, August 30th, and then September 6th is the Italian Grand Prix, obviously Ferrari's home race. So, I mean, but can you imagine if that trajectory holds and he does replicate third in Zandvoort and the win in Monza next year, regardless of what Hamilton does, the whole feeling around Ferrari's season would kind of flip around, I think, at that point. I don't think you'd think, oh, they're going to win the championship, but you would suddenly be like, that is a team that can just kind of out of nowhere kind of get it together. So I really hope they can do that for the sake of this despondent kind of feeling we have around the team. It'd be great if he could do that. I'm not sure the win in Monza, the McLarens are going to be so difficult to beat
I know.
outright in at that kind of place. But I remember saying that last year, and Charles Leclerc beat them because they were able to stop one time less. So if they can replicate that again this year, not quite sure that characteristic has stayed, sadly, with the two cars. But yeah, we'll see. But definitely, if anyone in F1 right now can do it, then Leclerc would be the guy.
Can I just be honest? Because this goes, there's oh man, I'd love to see Leclerc win. I really would. It'd be great. But it kind of goes back to like that the disappointment and the sadness with Lewis Hamilton.
Hmm.
If Leclerc does get a win in the next couple of weeks, or if Leclerc does continue to obviously the British Grand Prix was a bit of a, but fourth, third, um,
Where was it? He was out of the points then, wasn't he? Is that
he
right?
was at 14th. Yeah, so he was
14th.
fourth in
Yeah.
Hungary, on the podium in Belgium.
But
Let's say he
again, but
continues like
remarkable
on
that
the
both
podium.
Yeah,
I guess
remarkable that both years it was the same score.
I just think that if Leclerc continues to do what Leclerc has been doing, and I don't hate it, but it does add to the sadness and the disappointment about Lewis
Mhm.
Hamilton. Because
Yeah.
in that opinion, like he should be better. And unless that Ferrari is exactly what's happening at Red Bull, where one car is great and the other one is not, or one driver can drive it and the other one can't, then I have so many questions there about where Lewis Hamilton is. And I think it adds to the sadness and the disappointment, honestly.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. But then if you're Leclerc, it would be a real boon if you can do that. So Charles Leclerc, people forget this. He was actually kind of lobbying quite hard when he heard that John Elkann wanted to bring Lewis Hamilton to the team and that Fred Vasseur wanted it.
Yes.
They were a bit like, oh, do we want to put, do we want to put Hamilton and Leclerc together like two star drivers? And Leclerc heard about it and he told them both, like, absolutely, bring him
Hmm.
in. Like, he's like, how am I going to know how good I am as a driver unless you put me alongside Hamilton? And I think, look, I don't know what Hamilton we're getting. It's obviously impossible to say versus previous seasons.
Hmm.
It does seem like there's a big confidence issue there and he's not happy with the car, but we can only judge what we're seeing on track. And Leclerc, if you take that China away and maybe a handful of the race at the start of the season, Leclerc has looked
Hmm.
more than comfortable against Lewis,
Yep.
and that's got to rate really highly in his kind of in the when you're putting check marks next to his name. So I know what you mean about the Lewis situation, but if you're Ferrari, the one good thing you can take from this is
Leclerc.
maybe Leclerc is just like maybe Lewis is just struggling a little bit, and Leclerc is actually just doing so well, and is actually has raised his game, like a lot of great athletes do when they're kind of put alongside another
Hmm.
great. They're like, right, I either have to do something with this or I have to lose it. So I do think that in all the Lewis talk, both that we've done, over
Uh-huh.
the last couple of weeks, and just generally in Formula One, I do think Leclerc's name kind of gets forgotten a little bit because I think if he wasn't
I
doing
think
as
he's
well,
actually terribly underrated.
I think yeah, I think he's underrated, and you can see why this year because it
Yeah.
hasn't been a whole high the whole time. There has been dips
Mhm.
and peaks, but yeah, I think he's probably not getting the plaudits. I think if it was yeah, maybe everyone knows about Leclerc and we know how good he is in qualifying, but it does feel like there should be more kind of respect on his name at the moment. So maybe,
Uh-huh.
and again, to the point you just made, if he wins either of those two races coming up or is still strong in both of them, it would be difficult to kind of look beyond him, I think, in that sense.
So one of the things that like this time of year, you're on vacation. Lawrence was he was like photographing at MotoGP.
Yeah, yeah. So Lawrence
Can I
couldn't get
just
away
say,
from
like,
racing for a second. Yeah,
I've
he was
I've
just like, yeah,
I've said this to him a number of times. Like, you're a great writer. You're great on TV. Like, dude, you're in the wrong profession. He does.
he,
Like, if you
yeah.
haven't seen this man's photos, please check out his Instagram because he's
Lawrence
truly,
Edmondson. I think it's
yes,
Lawrence Edmondson F1. Yeah, yeah.
he's so talented when it comes like just his travel photos, whatever.
Oh.
Anyway,
Well,
so
so I went to Japan for the first time last year. Lawrence and I went, and then this year,
yeah,
and usually because Japan, it's because of where it is in the calendar, and just because it's Japan, and you want to see as much of it as you can. A lot of people stay out there, and then we'll travel on to the next race. Me and Lawrence did similar things where, like, I went one way, he got on his bike and went the other, and I was taking pictures on my little iPhone at the time, like of like Mount Fuji as I passed it on the
right.
train. All awful, all stuff I looked at after. I was like, that was terrible. I don't know what I was thinking. Then you see Lawrence's photos, and they're every single one of them. It's like that
So
is
good.
one of the best things I've ever seen. So yeah, he's incredibly good at that. And I only spoke to him briefly, but it sounds like he'll have a great set of stories for us next week about the
Awesome.
MotoGP. So
I
yeah,
can't wait.
awesome opportunity for him to do that.
So back to what I was saying earlier is like you are about because during this break, he's out doing MotoGP. There's not a ton of news. Like
Yeah.
computers are not allowed to be opened, no emails sent. It's pretty great. Um, so you have an article that looking back on some of your preseason predictions, which is like
Yes.
always one of those like scary moments. You're like, how right was I? But also how wrong was I? Do
Yeah.
you how scary was it for you to like dig in and be
Well,
like,
yeah, it was a little bit because the thing is, there's those kind of joke Twitter accounts, isn't there, of freezing cold takes, and I think
yes,
every one of us fears being the guy that says Lamar Jackson's not, he's going to be a bust
right?
for
You're like,
the
that
for the
aged
Ravens, or
well.
yeah, or whatever. So
Lewis Hamilton's going to
like,
win the championship. That
yeah,
aged well.
yeah. and I said something similar to that. I was like, there's no reason Lewis can't win the championship.
Mhm.
Um, in when Lawrence and I spoke in December last year. So this wasn't one of the predictions I looked at, but I basically made the point we made earlier, like, if the car's good, why not? But here are all my predictions I made.
Okay.
If you wanna look at them, and we can see, and some of them I cringed at. So
Give me the
first one,
cringy. Give me the cringy.
the cringiest one, well, the one that hasn't aged is Alonso will take Aston Martin back to the podium. Obviously, that one hasn't happened.
It's
Um,
not.
and the other one, and it has a big picture of Liam Lawson underneath it. Sorry to Liam Lawson, but a rookie will win a race this year because I
Yeah.
was banking on the fact that you had Antonelli and you had Liam Lawson in front running cars.
Yeah.
Obviously, Antonelli had the podium in Canada, but it hasn't been that strong for him. There's one I'm going to say for the end, which kind of redeems me a little bit, I think, because it was
Okay.
a left field one I got right. Verstappen will leave Red Bull as well. I think that I was on the right track with there was no
Hmm.
smoke without fire. There was a lot going on there. I was happy with what I wrote around it, saying like, if you follow this closely this year, this will be a talking point. So I was happy with that. Then this one, I would like to know from you, Nicole, how nitpicky I should be on this because technically this one hasn't come true yet unless you count
Okay.
the sprint race. But I said Charles Leclerc will win 2 races before Lewis Hamilton wins one. Now, obviously, Lewis has won one sprint race,
I don't count the sprint race as a race win
but
though.
I don't either. So I think
Uh-uh.
that obviously is still up in the air, and I would actually still stand by that one as a longer season
So would
prediction.
I.
And I think that, but that's what's interesting. What I wrote at the time was, you know, Lewis, it will take him a bit of time to bed in, you know,
It's the
and
sentiment. It's the
yeah, but
sentiment of the struggle.
exactly. And I was like, look, by the middle of the year they'll be on even par, but early in the year expect Leclerc to be the quicker one. And actually, you know, Charles was up and down, like we said, and has finished stronger. There's a great line here where I put a slow start relative to Leclerc seems a fair prediction, given where both men are coming into their first year as teammates. I mean, in a weird way, I've nailed it, even though I didn't nail how close it was. But the one I'm proud of, and the one that I think saves me from complete ridicule and embarrassment, is one that I think you'll agree was left field at the start of the season. But I said Oscar Piastri will be leading the championship at the summer break. So by 9 points, he
I
is
don't
leading.
think that is out of left field though. I don't think
I
that is
think,
out of left
yeah,
field.
I think it would have been. I think it certainly felt like it in March when I wrote this because Norris was such a strong favorite. I think we thought that Max would be right up there with him as well, and that
Yes.
maybe you'd get similar to what we had in 24, where it was kind of Lando and Max Verstappen fighting for a lot of the wins, and then Piastri. And the reason he wasn't really considered at the start of the year was he was the inconsistent McLaren driver last year. And then
Hmm.
just out of nowhere this season, he's kind of made that step up, especially in qualifying, which has kind of set the bedrock for
Right.
everything else that he's done. But I'm really pleased to have got that right because for a long time now, long time listeners to this podcast will hopefully remember. I mean, even though one of my biggest bugbears is whenever I write anything, people will just tweet back and say British bias, British bias. But like, I do think Piastri has the highest ceiling out of the two of those guys, the Australian and the
I do
British
too.
guy. And I've thought it for a while. And the bit I wrote at the time in that article was if Piastri can kind of close that floor up to Norris's level, then over a 24 race season, he'll be the guy to beat. And I think that's I have to say Norris has impressed me how he's kind of almost I think he's stabilized this season a little bit.
Hmm.
And we're actually now in a position where they're so close together, it's almost as hard to call it as it ever has been. But
Hmm.
if I was to, gun to my head, you'd say pick one of them, I'd still pick Piastri.
So would
So I was
I.
pleased with that one. So I think without that one, I would have been a bit like, well, I got all of those very wrong. That one was, that's like the lead. If you're going to get any of them right, getting
Right.
who like the championship fight one right, I think is the best one to get. But yeah, so about 1 out of 5 strike rate, I would say there. But it was meant to be intentionally kind of left field out there predictions. So,
I like it.
you know, but
I don't think I don't
wait.
okay. I don't think any of them, maybe the Alonso one is a bit
The
cringe.
Alonso, yeah, the
Any
Alonso
of
one stood out
them
like,
are
yeah,
like,
that's
oh
that's
my
that's
God, I can't believe you said that.
yeah.
I think it's all so well done. Well done.
But then I mean, Nicole, it really summarizes what you said about Aston. Exactly that point.
Yeah.
Like podium maybe is a little bit like oh that's but like I think we all expected that Aston would make a step up this year
That's why
and
they're a
would
disappointment
yeah
because we just expected
exactly. So
more.
it's kind of funny when you look back at predictions, it actually helps you understand why you feel certain ways about teams and drivers. Because you're like, oh, look what I was saying in March about that guy. And then now he's in this place here. So I think that's quite telling for them. I think because they've been nowhere near the podium. I mean, imagine if I did look back and I was like, imagine if just out of nowhere I'd said Nico Hulkenberg will get a podium this year. Not that I
No, I
ever
never would have
did
said
think
that.
that, but I was looking at it and I was like, man, like imagine if we called that, like how cool that would have been. But obviously, none of us can even claim to have thought that. Not even that weekend. No, that
Um,
weekend I didn't even think he was going to do it. So,
I have to tell you, Ryan just walked in here and he was like, Will Buxton?
oh really? Wow.
Not
Okay.
Will
Well,
Buxton. Not Will Buxton. No.
no, that would be if I was explaining, to
When
make
the
a prediction.
green flag
Yeah.
flies,
Yeah. To
the
make a
race
prediction, you have to say
will
something you think will
begin.
happen. Yeah.
Right. The
Sorry to Will.
driver who
Will Will's
finishes.
Will's got no way of responding here as well. I feel like
No,
this is
that's
bullying at this
why.
point, isn't it? Yeah,
That's
yeah.
why we can attack
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I think we can just keep
um,
going. Yeah.
it's like
Sorry,
the
I cut
end.
you
It's
off. You
like
were
the
doing a
end
very
of
good one.
Jimmy
You were doing a
Kimmel.
very good one.
Up. Our apologies to Matt Damon. We ran out of time. Apologies to Will
Yeah.
Buxton. We ran out of time.
Yeah.
Let's go through our midseason rankings. Do we want to do this a little bit like a? I don't want to do it by points. I think in my,
No.
you want to do it more like a power rankings thing?
Yeah, and top three or top five for me is good. I mean, it's always
Yeah,
tough in F1 because like obviously like we've done these before, Lawrence and I, at the end of the season, when you're
I
ranking like the
know.
top driver of the year. And really, the number one guy should be one of the top two guys in the championship. It's very difficult to say the guy leading the championship isn't there, but I think you can look at the context of the
Sometimes you have to
car.
look at what they're using and what they have
Exactly.
and how
And
they've used.
there's a big one in mind that will, I mean, it won't surprise a lot of people, but like who will stand out for that reason. Like he's not high up the championship, but I've already mentioned his name. People might guess who it is. But happy if you want to go first, Nicole, with your three or your top, your top one, and we can go back
Um,
to back. But
mm,
if you say your three, I can say mine if you want, and then we can kind of work out how we got there.
so
Because
I honestly,
I really struggled with who goes third for mine
me
because
too.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I'll be honest. I will still say my number one driver is actually Max.
yep, I think that's fair.
And it for me, it's a little bit what you said before about Max will do these things and we're almost like, ho hum, there goes Max again. But if you
Yep,
really look at it, it goes back to what I've been saying about him forever. He can drive a shoebox. And at some point, you start taking that for granted, or you start to pay attention to just how great he is. And you can look at the team, you can look at the chaos in the team, you can look at the fact that they had to sack their team principal in the middle of the year. You can look at the fact that Sergio Perez is suddenly looking a lot better than he was a season ago. Yet Max is still out there. Now, is he going to win the championship? No, he's
yeah,
not. Is he still in contention to win races? Yes. And is he still a threat and a menace week in and week out? Yes. Yes, he
absolutely,
is.
yeah,
So
absolutely, yeah,
for me, I think Max is my number one driver. And then for me, number two is Piastri.
yep,
And part of that is the fact that he has made the jump that he has made. Part of it is the fact that he has closed the gap in qualifying. Part of it is also watching his mental maturity, dealing with some of the things that he's dealt with, the mistakes, the frustrations, the whatever you could say. And I'm not surprised that he's been so even keel because that's just who he is. But I think when you can maintain those aspects of your personality when you're in a pressure cooker and the person who is putting the most pressure on you is actually your teammate, you really start to see it form in sort of like a higher level. So for me, number two is Piastri. I'm struggling though with number three because I
yep,
feel like I could go three, four, five, six, and throw in a couple of drivers and they're almost interchangeable.
yeah. Yeah, I struggled. Well, so I struggled with three for a different reason, but I think it's more because I not that I didn't want to put Max number one, but I
Yeah.
wanted to try and look beyond Max and the usual as the usual suspect. But I think everything you said about Max is fair. I can give you my top two if you want, because I put
Yeah, give me your top two, and then I want to talk about who like you have in the mix for three.
well, I think one of my two might be one of your people in the mix. So I really have been impressed with this driver. So number one, I actually put as Piastri because I think
Okay.
I think the maturity, the step up, and the fact that it's kind of cometh the hour, cometh the man style thing where he's finally got this championship winning car underneath him, and he's risen to that. And I think Lando has struggled a bit more with that, and it's been telling. Obviously, at this point, I actually put Max first. I crossed him out, and I was like, let's be a bit more fun. I actually put Nico Hulkenberg as number two, not just because of the podium, But I think that if you look at what he's done across the
He's
season,
ninth in points.
yeah, but like if you look at what he's driving, like
Yes.
if you look at kind of the way he's reset the expectations around that team, and I think obviously the podium stands out as just such a big result, but I think it was such a big result. It's kind of got him. It's got to push him right up there, in terms of how you look at his season.
It's
And
doing a lot with a little.
yeah, and I think also we I mentioned earlier that Bortoletto's level has stepped up. I think that a lot of the time when that happens, if the other teammate is performing, you have to kind of give them credit in a way. You're like, look, you that's why teams when they get a rookie driver in, they're like, we need a really solid driver in the other car because we need the benchmark to be high. We need to be
Hmm.
able to point to this young driver. Bortoletto looks incredibly exciting. But with any young driver, you need to be able to point across the garage and say, well, look, okay, here's how he does it, and he's really, really good. And Hulkenberg has done that, and I think Bortoletto, ever since that podium, weirdly in Silverstone, Bortoletto seemed, his he's been on the rise. So I actually put him there. Now, obviously, the big missing one for me is Max, and he probably is third. But I put in brackets underneath George Russell, harsh on him because he's been so good as well. Like at one point when we were talking about George Russell not having a contract for next season, I think
Hmm.
all of us said like, how crazy is that? Because he's actually been one of the best drivers of the first kind of bit of the
I
season.
know.
But yeah, so mine that I finished with after a lot of scribbling and a lot of doodling and everything was Piastri one, Hulkenberg two, obviously with the context of what he's driven and how he's driven it, and then
Yeah.
three Max. But I feel like that is incredibly harsh on Max. Like Max really easily could have been number one, but I think
Yes.
again the opposite reason is true of Max. My expectations for Max are so high anyway. I don't. He does just doesn't. He doesn't. Not that he doesn't impress me anymore, but you're almost like, no, but Max just does that.
It's
Like, and
that
he's
bar
third.
that he
Yeah.
sets. Yeah.
So
No,
I'm only putting him there because of how good I think Max is. Like he should be in the top three, but I just had to put Hulkenberg above him. I think Hulkenberg deserves those plaudits at a higher level than Max just because of what he's driven. But
so
obviously, happy to be wrong.
My conversation for third is actually Leclerc,
Yeah.
George Russell,
Yeah.
and Hulkenberg.
Yeah, which I
And
had similar, and it was at one point you've got to look at it and say you've got to almost discount the front runners a little bit and just say like,
Lando
yeah,
is not in the conversation. You realize
which is
that.
telling, yeah, which is
Both of
telling
us
neither of
went
us did
five,
that.
6 deep and did not name Lando Norris.
Yeah, I think we've seen too many mistakes from Lando, and as I've alluded to, I think his his last couple of races, it does feel like he turned a corner a bit in terms of the way he was approaching things. There was obviously a few of those mistakes in Belgium when he was chasing Piastri, but I don't think he was ever really going to get Piastri. But if you look at like Monaco, Austria when he was being chased by
Mhm.
Piastri the whole time, and then Budapest again where the same thing was happening. Really solid races from him, and so if he carries that on, I think he'll be all right. But yeah, the fact that neither of us put Lando in our top three, this is a guy second in the
Right.
championship, 9 points off the lead of the championship, I think it is. Um, I think says a lot. So I think. I do have to raise my hand and apologize to Mr. Charles Leclerc and Mr. George Russell because they easily could be there. I think Nico Hulkenberg just he had to. Like for me, I was like, the guy's driving a Sauber. He's scored a podium with it. He's like you said, he's in ninth. He's
Yep.
kind of that. There's been rare that he's really you looked and been like, Hulkenberg's made a mistake or he's driven awfully. So that's why I put him in there. But yeah, a lot of honorable mentions in there. And weirdly, you know, I don't think there's many other drivers that have been as consistent as those five drivers you mentioned, Nicole.
Uh-huh.
Max, Piastri, Hulkenberg, Leclerc, once he got his head around things, and Russell. I think those five guys really, any of those could be in there
Hmm.
interchangeably. And then I think the rest, Albon maybe, I thought could, I think
If Albon
if
had
we
been
were
a
doing
little
a
bit
top,
more consistent.
yeah, if we were doing a top five, Albon maybe would be kind of in that who's in fifth discussion. Um, and then, yeah, I think
I
it's
think
hard.
Albon's in my conversation for maybe being in sixth through eighth, which I think he's
Yeah,
eight
fair.
points. So it's pretty much fitting. I feel like the bottom three conversation is actually far easier for
Yeah.
me. Although my bottom one is sort of like a conglomeration, it's a team effort. For me, it's
I,
Hamilton.
okay. Wow. You say he's been the worst, or is this? Are we doing best and worst? Or are we doing best and because I think Lewis still, I would counter that he still won the sprint. He's still even that those two races before the summer break were pretty bad, Belgium and Hungary. But before that, he had looked okay. I think the disappointment factor with Lewis was how off edge he looked. But hey, I don't
Like
want to. I like,
No, but I think it's like for the same reason that I look at Max Verstappen and I put him at number one.
yeah,
I'm doing that, but the opposite with Lewis
okay,
Hamilton. Also, you bring to
brave,
the table 7 world championships. How many
yeah,
wins? How many podiums? Like you are considered one of the greatest drivers of all time, and you are fulfilling your childhood dream. And we had all of these expectations. And yes, there's a fair amount of like sort of recency bias into all of that. I just think the demeanor, the attitude, the ability to clearly the car has something in it. You're
mm,
supposed to be one of the greatest drivers of all time. Why can't you unlock it? Why can't you figure it out? So to me, that goes down as a massive disappointment. And yes, there are worse drivers on the grid, but
yeah,
you're not. I'm holding you to a level. I'm holding you to an expectation because you are Lewis freaking Hamilton. So for me, Hamilton's in my bottom three.
okay,
Yuki is in my bottom three.
yeah,
Again, because even if that Red Bull is not great, it's still a hell of a lot better than like the Haas. It's still a
yeah,
hell of a lot better. And you're consistently being outshined by your baby bulls. Like he's been in the points. I can't even remember how many times now, what, two or three. It's
mm,
just it's not enough. And it's the same thing. You have something, you're not using it. And then for me, the bottom one is sort of like the team effort between Colapinto,
Alpine,
Doohan, and
yeah,
Alpine.
yeah.
Um,
I had them as the worst, the two of them together.
Me too. And
Yeah,
I sometimes I don't even think it's not necessarily fair to the drivers because I don't think they're getting the support that they need mentally.
yeah,
They're not there's something fundamentally flawed with that team and it's not helping the younger drivers. It's not helping the development. Like the situation of here's a short-term contract, go see what you can do, but no pressure or like here doing go into a season. The whole situation is absolutely I can't say the word because it's naughty and we'll probably get
yeah,
fined. But to me, Colapinto doing Alpine, like it's a team effort. They're clearly like the bottom one.
yeah. No, I had the same one. I wasn't sure if we were if dovetailing them together, but I think it's fair to put them as so that's my number one, Colapinto doing.
Yeah.
What's it really interesting about this is if we had done this before the Austrian Grand Prix, I think number one categorically would have been Liam Lawson. You know, started the year, looked like a deer in headlights, dropped by Red Bull. I think unfairly, but
Yeah.
he just looked like he wasn't in his head was in the game. Since Austria, he's finished sixth, then he had a retirement, then he finished eighth twice. You know, he's and Hadjar in that same spell hasn't scored any points. So I really struggled to put Lawson in a top three worst, you know, the worst three drivers of the year
Right.
because of that. I know it's recency bias, but again, I think the context of everything Lawson went through this year so damaging for him. And I spoke to a lot of people at Racing Bulls and Red Bull over the past couple, you know, well, the whole season, but last couple of weeks, they said they only just felt like the kind of the old Lawson was back. You know, last year's kind of, you know, he walks with a swagger. You know, he's a confident dude. So I really
They're only
struggled to put him in
separated by
there.
2 points.
Yeah, and that's really a testament to how Lawson's managed to kind of turn that around, I think. So yeah, I felt harsh with this one as well, but I mean, so my second was Sonoda. And then I had to say afterwards, and I feel like this maybe is a harsh one because he did have a mega start to the season. But Behrman from like Miami onwards just really hasn't looked all that great.
His
Um,
qualifying's been brutal all season, though.
yeah, so I think that is a really big one for me. But I always think with you know with rookies, you know, he's got Esteban Ocon's not a bad driver in any stretch, but you look at the difference there, you know, 19 points at a team like Haas is a really big deal. So
Yeah.
Behrman in there, I totally get what you meant about Lewis. I just couldn't bring myself to say Lewis been one of the worst. He's been in the points like every race
British
bar one.
bias.
Yeah, well, yeah, there you go. There's my British bias coming up. But I think definitely Lewis is if it was who's been the most disappointing driver, like we said, Lewis would have been in mine. But that would be mine. The Alpine two. Out of interest, who would you say was worse? Doohan, if we had to break our one into one, Doohan or Colapinto, who do you think's been the worst driver? I have a very strong opinion on this, um, but I wonder who yours is first.
Colapinto.
Sorry to put you on the
Colapinto.
spot like that. Yeah, I'm the same. I think Colapinto would be
I was trying to
worse for
think
me.
back and make sure that it wasn't like a recency bias sort of thing.
No,
Um, I
he's been
he's been
really
awful.
below average.
Um,
Yeah,
and he can
he's
really write off a car.
well,
Um,
and the thing is as well. I think with that is that Doohan didn't look great. I mean, look, he obviously spun out in Australia on the first lap. He had that weird thing in Japan. Remember where he hit the brakes with the DRS open and everything and spun out
No,
and
I don't remember that one, but okay.
yeah, he just didn't
Weird.
look. It was
Yeah.
weird, but you have to put the mitigating circumstance on Doohan that before it even turned a wheel this year, they'd signed his replacement. And I think coming into his first race at home and the
Right.
pressure around him, there were at least extenuating circumstances. I think that, and he was driving. Let's face it, Alpine this year haven't looked great. I mean, I think Gasly has made them look fantastic at
I
points.
don't think we knew how bad they were when
Yeah,
doing
so
the
I think
car,
there
though.
was exactly. I think there was mitigating circumstances with Colapinto. He came in and really all he had to do was not be as bad as Doohan looked in the car, and I
Right.
would say arguably he's been worse. And what didn't help him as well is he came into the season with that massive hype from the Williams. I
Mhm.
think fair as well because he looked great last year with Williams
But
car.
it also makes me
So I think that's
wonder,
that's hurt him as well.
like the support aspect of it, because I think Williams speaks, I think they still speak highly of him.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah,
And
he's still on the books at Williams. I mean, he's
I
still their kind
know,
of their long term project for now. And I think that James Vowles has talked about it quite well, hasn't he? He
yeah,
said like, oh, we know he's in a tough situation there, but they can't be that impressed. I mean, he's been so stark the performance gap to
it's
Gasly.
been bad. And if you look at it too, at the end of last season, there were a few moments with Williams where he wasn't
They had
going
a
in the
good
right
car.
direction.
Yeah, and they had a good car. And what was interesting with Colapinto was he had a fantastic first few races. Everyone was raving about
Mhm.
him. I remember walking down the paddock and there was like people screaming, and I was looking back and I was like, "Are they screaming at Franco Colapinto?" He's like,
Uh-huh.
but the rise was massive. And then there were two big moments. One was him crashing in Vegas, and then him crashing in Brazil, street circuits. Brazil was tricky. Let's be honest. It was a tough place to go and race for anyone. A lot of good drivers spun out there,
Yeah.
but it did seem that the pressure around him is pretty big, and you do wonder, how detrimental that's been to him longer term. But yeah, I would say if we were breaking it into one driver per position, I would say it's Colapinto worst, doing second, and then I guess you I guess you'd have to put Yuki. I feel harsh putting in there because I feel like with Perez, we know the circumstances, but he's in a Red Bull. The Red Bull's won what
Yes.
3 races, 2 races this season, had a
Mhm.
bunch of pole positions. So yeah, you can't, you can't look away from Yuki, sadly.
Mm-mm. Before we let you go, what is one bold prediction? I love these. What's one bold prediction that you have for this second half of the season, which by the way actually starts next weekend?
Yeah, we're preempting this, aren't we, a little bit? And
Mhm.
we'll have to throw all of these to Lawrence as well,
Yes.
so that he's also got the potential to have some freezing cold takes as well.
Mhm.
This is one that, and having mentioned, I'm now
Bold. You have to be
very
bold.
have to be
You
bold.
can't be like, "Mm,
Yeah.
McLaren's going to win the championship.
Well, that yeah. I mean that would be the most milk toast.
McLaren's going to win the constructors title. That's
Yeah.
mine."
Well, yeah, I think anyone thinking that's not going to happen would be really
That would be
brave.
bold.
Um, I I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because looking at it, I want to do one about race wins really or podiums. What I wanted to say, but I just don't believe it is the problem. I wanted to be like, oh, Yuki will get his head back in the game and he'll be finishing top 5 by the end of the year. But I
Yeah.
remember coming out the summer break last year making the same call about Sergio Perez, and let's face it, Perez was a more experienced driver than, or, is a more experienced driver than Yuki, and didn't get that there. Um, Now
I
this
know.
is where the British
I want
this
to make mine about wins too.
yeah, you go if you want.
Nope.
But
You
mine
go.
mine is going to throw the British bias allegations right back at me. But I have a reason. I
I
think
know you have to
Lewis.
go.
I'm going to
Go,
say
go,
Lewis.
go, go, go.
I'm going to say Lewis Hamilton wins Monza would be my bold prediction. The reason I say it is because I don't think Lewis is where we need him to be at the moment, or where Ferrari need him to be at the moment in terms of fans enjoying the sport. But Lewis, more than any other driver in the time I've covered racing, he's a moments guy a lot of the time. Look at Silverstone last year. A moment presents
Yeah.
itself. He steps up. It's one of the things that I think it was always easy to overlook when he was at Mercedes because everyone said, well, he has the best car, but he really, in those moments, he was able to really turn. And Max does the same thing. It's the hallmark of the great drivers. And I think that, yeah, I could definitely see Lewis coming to a place like Monza or one of the races later in the year, and just like he did in China, just something clicking and him winning the race and kind of flipping the narrative on its head. That is, and again, that's pretty bold. He's behind Charles by about 40 points. So I'll say that. And please do send all your British bias accusations at me, at Nate Saunders F1.
Hold on, stand by. I'm trying to fire off a tweet as we speak. No, I'm kidding.
No, I mean, do it. Yeah, I mean, it's a fair one. But that would be mine. I mean, I wanted it to be a big, a big kind of brash one. I was going to say maybe Antonelli wins a race, but I'm not sure if he's going to be in that headspace.
I'm not sure how much I actually believe in my bold prediction.
But that's half the thing with these predictions. Sometimes you're like, am I just being bold for the sake of it? Like, am I just being like, oh
no,
yeah, okay.
but I think that's what I'm. Yeah. It has to be bold, so I'm going to say Williams is going to win a race before the season ends.
Oh wow, not even podium, just straight up win.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some race somewhere where there's some sort of like bizarre strategy, chaos, whatever. Maybe it's a rain race.
You've been watching too much of the F1 movie, Nicole. I think is the
You know, I still haven't watched it yet.
Oh, have you not? Okay, well, I mean, I was going to say if you had been, you'd be like, absolutely can win. But
maybe I'll watch it.
Let's not forget last year, Brazil last year, we had 2 Alpines on the podium.
I know.
No one would have called that at the summer break. So, sometimes these things sound crazy in the moment, and then something can happen.
Also, maybe I was just inspired by the hat that's above your head.
Yeah, which is one of my favorite hats. They've been wearing it a lot recently. It's their old kind of iconic, actually Saudi based colors from the late 70s.
Okay.
I like that one. But okay, if the bold prediction is Williams, which of the 2 guys wins?
Oh God, come on.
Because you've got a tough one there, because you got a race winner in Carlos Sainz, but you've also got Alex Albon, who I think has been
better.
Well, yeah, I think he's been one of the kind of the standout guys outside of that top 3 I mentioned earlier. And yeah, like
Sainz.
Yeah, okay, interesting. So a bit like me with Hamilton, you think like the experience would tell eventually.
I don't know.
Interesting. Well, look, I'm not going to hold you.
I'm just over here throwing darts, making bold predictions. You're making
me. If Williams win a race this year, Nicole, and Albon wins, I'm not going to turn around to you and be like, "Well, you didn't call Albon." Like, I'm not gonna clutch at straws like that. Like, I won't do that. I just thought it's interesting to see which one you'd pick. But
all right, yeah.
I mean, honestly, I would say as well, if Williams even get a podium this year, that'd be one of my favorite results of all time in F1.
But let's remember, they got taken down to, what was it? They were 4th in Australia, and then they got the position taken away. They've not been far. They've really not been. When they're decent.
Yeah.
And if they continue to make changes.
Yeah, the problem, the frustration for Williams, but I think what's been so good about this season in Formula One is everyone down from that top 4. It's so competitive. I think I read, I think motorsport.com had it the other day that whoever finishes last this year, it's going to be the highest last place finish in terms of points for ages. Like, there's never been a season where the team in last has or will have the amount of points they're projected to get. Yes. So, you're looking at a year where all these teams are just making so many steps forward, and you do wonder, as those top teams look to 26, will that gap actually really shift up before the end of the season? So I'm not gonna dismiss it as crazy, because I mean, I just said Lewis Hamilton will win a race this year. So
exactly.
I mean, that's almost as crazy as Williams at this point.
Do we get the whole gang back together next week?
I believe so. I believe we get the photographer, Mr. Lawrence Edmondson, and the 2 of us. Right. So we'll have to I think early on put his feet to the fire. Who's his bold prediction?
What is his bold prediction? Let's not give him time to think about it, though.
Yeah. I know he'll listen. He's very good at listening to this pod when he's not on it. You probably know, but
speaking of listening and watching, thank you for watching and listening. We call that a transition.
That was great.
You struggled with those in your hosting days, did you not?
I did indeed. I there's a blooper reel that I think I've
I know.
I mean, Quinton, our producer, who we've mentioned a couple of times, the guys did a great job of bleeping out my swearing, but I was like,
see, it's not as easy as
it is tough. It's tough. It is tough. And I've got to say, it's always really impressive when, obviously, you've been doing this for a long time. When Katie's been on as well, the 2 of you have had the Sports Center experience, and it is genuinely unreal to see just how good you are at doing them, Nicole.
We're very talented.
And I tell friends of mine all the time, the hardest thing in this job is those just segueing from one thing to the other. It sounds easy when you listen to podcasts and you try and do it.
It's sometimes it's not. You're like, how am I going to get out of that?
Yeah, exactly. And you're
transition now.
Yeah. So no, that was another perfect one. So I'm making notes of these mentally as we go.
Thank you.
Next time I do it, if I have to, I'll be better.
All right. I've missed you. I will see you next
You
week.
too.
For you who are
Great
watching
seeing
at
you, Nicole.
home, thank you. Remember, leave a comment, hit us up with the like button, hit us up with that 5-star review, subscribe to the ESPN F1 content, our F1 channel for more content all season long. And remember, Unlapped is presented by Oracle. Right now, Oracle is offering to cut your current cloud bill in half if you move to OCI. See if your company qualifies at oracle.com/unlapped. I will see you next week. Bye-bye.
See you next week.